So all spiritual groups talk about this moment, being in the moment. And you get it from so many different angles. In non-duality, it's normally called consciousness. You are consciousness, or rest in the I am, or more European or Western non-duality might say it's beingness. It's this present moment, it's presence, this aliveness. Buddhists would talk about being in the moment, resting the attention in the moment. Christians would talk about Christ consciousness and the Holy Spirit. So you've got all these different ways of talking about this moment. You'd have more New Age people that talk about following the heart. There's so many different ways in which this moment is talked about. So something that I think all these different religions and all these different philosophies can agree on is that this, what's happening, is the freedom. But this is where it's so confusing, because even in this talk, in society and the way that we're always taught that thinking is king. And it even seems like in this talk, I'm teaching you something intellectual. I'm teaching you a new idea. Obviously, because I'm sitting here and I'm speaking, that's what it seems like. But actually, I'm talking about something beyond that. And something that can never be captured in words. But in a way, words are used because there's two reasons. Firstly, because when I'm speaking or when this is being spoken about, there's a resonance with this moment, not with the intellect, not with what's being said, but there's a resonance with something that's being pointed to that's not conceptual. And then the second part is, in a way, because there's a belief in concepts, because the belief is that freedom is found in concepts, it's almost as if concepts counteract that. So because you believe you have a life, you believe you're living, you believe you're sitting listening to me, in a way, to that one that believes all of that, that appearance of that one that believes all of that, you're kind of in a way giving them negative ideas. You're kind of cutting out those ideas. Negatives meaning the opposite. So you believe you're sitting there, and then somebody, say, in non-duality would say, there is no you. And for a moment when you say that, the concept of there being a you drops away. Normally what happens then is the mind then says, the truth is there is no you, but that's not the truth. That's just a new concept that's been used to counteract the other concept. The same with non-doership. There is no doer. And the mind believes it is a doer. And so suddenly that is dropped. And in that moment that it's dropped, all that's left is this moment, is this innocence. So it's kind of two-way what happens when you're speaking about this subject. The first way is that when I speak, I'm reminding you of an innocence that's present. And then the second part is that the concepts are countering out the concepts that you already have. So it's like two concepts collide and momentarily they both disappear. But then the mind either re-identifies with the old concept or then takes in the new concept and says, that's me, that's who I am. What all of it's pointing to is a freedom that's right here. This radical aliveness that is the nature of all things. This sense of being, this experiencing, this knowing of everything that's happening. That's instantaneous, that doesn't require a thought. That's totally innocent and never suffered. What happened in humanity when it began to speak, so thousands and thousands, maybe even millions, I don't even know when we began to speak, but a long time ago when we began to speak, there was a forgetting or a covering of this present moment and believing that what you thought what was thought was true. And everything that's thought goes into time. Time and thinking are the same thing. So you can only think about something that exists in time. So what happened to the human was they begun to live in time and believe who they were was found in time. And it's all a lie. It's all a false world. There's nothing wrong with it, and it's part of our communication, and it's the way we exist as a society. But this identification with being someone that moves in time is where suffering comes from. It's not, the suffering isn't the thoughts, the feelings, the ideas, the sensations. Even if they're painful sensations or painful thoughts, that's not the problem. The problem is that which identifies with that being who you are. So the thought says, I am this feeling, I am anger, so therefore I'm bad. I am jealousy. It's my fault. I own it. It's my responsibility. And I'm bad, or they're bad for making me jealous. And so rather than everything arising as it does, so the thoughts and the feelings being part of this painting, this separate entity is always claiming to be things. Ideas, thoughts, feelings, sensations, money, wealth, its home. So I am a rich person. There is nobody that's rich. It's just a way we talk in our society. It's not a truth, but our society preaches that is the truth. So people really think they are rich and they're better than poor people. And none of this is true. None of this is a reality. It's our way of communicating. So I am rich compared to some of the people I met in India, but I am poor compared to some of the people I meet in the West, to a lot of the people I meet in the West. But neither's truth. I'm not richer than and I'm not poorer than. That's got nothing to do with who I am. It's a description of what's happening to this body at that moment, and it's something that's always possibly going to change. One moment I'm rich to someone, next moment I'm poor to someone else. And we have this way of communicating and way of speaking about things which is important, but it isn't who we are. Who we are is actually this present moment. Ooh. This beingness. This sense of aliveness. This aliveness that's been there when you've been rich, when you've been poor, when you've been good, when you've been bad, when you've been happy, when you've been sad, when you've been angry, when you've been furious, when you've been ecstatic, when you've been sexual, when you've been upset, when you've cried, when you've been sad, when you've been compassionate, when you've been empathetic, when you've been enraged. There has always been this sense of aliveness. When you've told yourself stories about victimhood or how brilliant you are, there has always been that presence. When you were 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, there was that presence. When you were 10, 20, always there has been this presence, this aliveness, this sense of being, this immediacy. Hey, isn't there? That's who you are, is that sense of being. And then in that arises the person with a brain that thinks. And so waking up, in my definition, is the movement back to that essence of who you are, this beingness, this aliveness. It's not, and I'm not talking about being a perfect human, although I would love to sell myself as being the most perfect human being that never gets angry, that never cries, that never gets mad with Khaleesi, that never is rude and always joyful. Although I'd love to sell that to you, this is not a reality. Lisa is a accumulation of lots of different experiences. I am this Lisa person, this personality is accumulation of lots of different things. She's affected by what seemingly happened in the past and what's going to happen in the future. But that is not the experiencer. So the enlightenment doesn't happen to the person. The enlightenment is a movement back to something which isn't a thing, which doesn't belong to anyone, which doesn't belong to anyone, and is always present. And then when that movement happens, it affects the personality. Like, it dramatically affected me. It made me a lot nicer person, a lot more relaxed, a lot less stressed, a lot less worrying and anxiety. Well, it didn't make me perfect. I still have emotions and feelings and get angry with people or happy with people. But it's made me so much more compassionate, empathetic. And it's something which is constantly growing in the character. So the character is understanding this better. The body is understanding this and growing into this realization. And that's never ending. In human terms, there can always be an improvement of intelligence. There can always be an improvement of behavior, of a way of living, of way of seeing things, the conditioning, the traumas. All of those things will always grow. There's a never ending possibility in the human world. And that is total humility, to say and to completely see that the human can never be enlightened. The human always has the possibility to grow, to take responsibility for its actions, to improve its actions. Even though ultimately that person isn't the doer and has no free will, the person feels like it does. It comes with the feeling of having free will. I always have the possibility of being a better dog owner, even though I'm pretty freaking good. I always have the possibility of improvement, which is really beautiful. But that is a never-ending thing, and that instrument, this instrument that's always evolving and changing, doesn't get enlightened. And this is such an important realization that freedom is this movement back to this knowing, this energetic shift, this absolute seeing without doubt that who you are is this beingness, is this present moment. And it's energetic as well. I can't explain it, but it's like an energetic release. And then the integration of that is never ending. So the integration into the human form, and it's not the human that gets enlightened. It can never be, because the human doesn't really exist. There isn't somebody solid that could be enlightened. But the body-mind mechanism, certainly changes and grows with that. And there seems to be, in the apparent process of waking up, even though it's not a personal thing, there seems to be lots of different processes that happen. And there's not one process for everybody. There's an infinite amount of paths, for infinite amount of people. There's infinite possibilities of the way it goes. So there's as many different ways as different people that come into this subject. Because each body-mind will have its very unique conditioning and unique way of seeing this world. But there seems to be a similar process that happens. There's the listening to non-duality that happens, and really seeing and having these awakenings that who you are isn't something that's moving, isn't found in the world, but yet is the world, the whole entire world. And that this reality isn't a divided reality, there is no separation. And then the other side to it is the intellectual understanding and recognition of the seeker, of what that illusory person is seeking for in time, and really understanding what it's seeking for, and seemingly becoming more and more honest. So it goes back to its more basic wants and desires, rather than what you believe brings you freedom. So in the beginning, when you get into the subject, what you might believe brings you freedom, or what you've been taught, is money, love affairs, kids, house, education, whatever it is. And then over time you become more and more genuine and more honest. So then you might think it's enlightenment, but that's not it either. It gets more and more honest. Enlightenment is another idea that comes and goes. And so you become more and more real, until even the idea of enlightenment seems like a crazy idea. There's only everything that's happening. And the person is more and more genuine and more able to say what it thinks and feels without judging itself or constantly trying to constrict itself. Not because it's always having positive emotions, so therefore it's always being nice, but because it no longer believes it has to be nice, good, or anything. There's just a total trust in it being as it is. And actually, when that happens, when the person becomes more and more honest, that person's not going to be bad. It might go through a stage of badness coming out, like anger or rage coming out. But the more and more genuine you become, the human might be self-centered. It's an animal that's moving towards pleasure, but it's not evil or bad. It's just doing its thing. It's not trying to hurt people or manipulate people or con people. But yet it most probably will be selfish. Not in a bad way, but in the way that, we're an animal that's set up to move towards pleasure. And that's something that these animals can evolve and change with. But at the moment, we move towards that which is pleasurable. So maybe when there's the process of becoming more and more honest on the personal level, maybe you become more honest with your greed. You're sitting at a table with all your friends and there's one piece of cake left and everyone's too embarrassed and shy to take the cake, and they keep offering it to other people. So, oh no, you have it. No, you. Oh no, I couldn't. And then when you're waking up and becoming more honest, you're like, I have it, me, I want it. So you're very excited by that. So there's the two things that happens. There's this seeing that's not your seeing. It's not somebody's seeing, but there's the seeing that who you are is this present moment. The clouds move and it's seen that you are this presence, this eternal now, this eternity. And that you've never been walking through a separate world. You've never been in relationship with the world. There is only been yourself, experiencing yourself as wholeness. And then on the personal level, there is the recognition that everything you seek for as a person, not the movement towards pleasure, but that seeking energy that's looking for completion in time, isn't it. And there is that honesty there. I want money because I believe it will complete me. I want sex because I believe it will complete me. Whatever it is. I want you to say I'm wonderful because I feel it will complete me. And there's not even a care about it anymore. It just gets more and more and more honest. You are as you are. There you go. That's the whole 2 hours done. Complete. I might as well have my crisps now. Come on then. If you want one, come. Come on. Come. Come on. Come, Tracy.